Welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to I'm John Bentley. I'm the Commercial Director at OpenAthens, and thanks to our partners at Technology from Sage as well. We've got an opportunity now to talk about the user experience in the library. I've been working for OpenAthens for 10 years or so. I used to work in the publishing sector. And for me, user experience was always what happened when someone landed at the door of a website. But actually what I've realized over the last 10 years is for the libraries in particular, it's such a collaborative space. There's multiple pathways to content that the librarian needs to worry about and nurture. So this is an opportunity for us to discuss that. How do we get students, researchers to the digital resources that they need? How do we bridge that gap? How do we make it simple? Michael, are you going to be moving the slides on for me? I think I'll move to the next slide. Yeah. Thank you. So we are recording it. Please do pop question and answers, or any questions that you might have. Certainly, we'll attempt to answer them in the Q&A panel. Keep the chat coming as observations as you go along, and then just a reminder that there is a live transcript that people can toggle on and off. So what we'll cover. We probably won't take the whole hour, but we have an hour if it needs be. We'll share the key findings from the OpenAthens Library User Experience Report, which was a global report survey sent out to many people around the world, and also including in-depth interviews. We'll share findings from Technology from Sage's report about Librarian Futures, Part 2. Then we'll have a little discussion about the key themes. Look where the crossover between the reports are, and we're very lucky that we have Hannah and Sarah, who are two people who use the library, who've agreed to participate in the discussion and let us know what they're thinking. Let us share their thoughts. I was saying earlier, it's always important to have the voice of the user in the room. It's very easy, particularly when you're developing software, just to become so focused on what's in front of you. And it's always really important to make sure that we listen to and have conversations with users. Next slide, please. So these are our speakers, Richard, David, and Alexis, and I'll let them introduce themselves as they move through their presentations. And as I said, we have Hannah and Sarah, two master's students who've agreed to join us. So looking forward to this. Michael, what's next? Brilliant. I'm going to pass over to Richard.
Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. My name is Richard French. I am a product manager at OpenAthens, and I'm going to spend a few minutes to talk through the findings of some research we conducted on library user experience. Next slide, please. So a little bit about OpenAthens. OpenAthens is a software as a service. We work with libraries, we work with publishers, and we build that network of trust that enables librarians and publishers to work together. That's the role of OpenAthens. And our mission is to remove barriers to knowledge. So wherever you're working from, whatever you do in the world, we try and facilitate that access to the content that can help learners and researchers improve what they do day in and day out. We're not just in academia, we cover an array of different markets and sectors. We work in medicine, government, science and technology, and also the arts and humanities. And that need to access digital resources is universal. And to give you an idea of the scale of our work, over the past year, there have been over a $250 million transfers via OpenAthens to content. So that's users authenticating through OpenAthens to access content. Next slide, please. So yeah, here at OpenAthens, we often reference three major stakeholders, the three really important groups involved in e-resource engagement. So that's libraries, publishers, and end users. And by end users, I'm referring to students, researchers, and academic staff. So traditionally, OpenAthens is focused on the first two of these stakeholder groups, so libraries and publishers. But given the vast changes in the way that we learn and conduct research online in the past few years, we wanted to better understand the challenges end users face when they search for resources online, how they manage those resources, and what it means for their work when they have to compromise. So we kicked off this project in 2021 when we commissioned a consultancy firm Digerati to talk in depth to academic library users across the globe. We followed that up in 2022 with our own quantitative study that looked at issues that have a negative impact on students and researchers. Next slide, please. So for our quantitative study, we had responses from 174 students and researchers from across the globe. And on the screen is a summary of the 5 most frequently experienced issues from our survey respondents. So most frequently cited issue from our survey respondents was that they often or very often struggle with the challenge that the resources they need are in many different places. That was followed by not getting enough support from their library online. The third most frequent issue there is being unsure about the quality or the impact factor of the resources they have found, followed by not having access to all of the content they need, and finally, not being aware of new relevant research papers being published. So we found that there were recurring themes that appeared both in that qualitative and quantitative studies, which helped us identify a number of areas for improvement. Next slide, please. So the first area of improvement was around finding and accessing all relevant resources. So the institutional library might seem the obvious first port of call, but for many it is not, either in person or remotely. Digital is a preferred choice for students and researchers when they look for resources, and they often circumvent the library because they think there are faster, easier ways of getting what they need. So our study showed that students and researchers are finding their own online search efforts frustrated by resources being too widely dispersed across the internet. There's too much available, and without a central source of information about what resources are available, makes it impossible to be sure if what they're looking for exists. Additionally, clunky or hard to navigate library portals were also cited as a barrier to using those curated, high quality resources that their library subscribes to. And additionally, unreliable utility. So online is a preferred search option for most students and researchers, and many classes are online too. However, in some countries and regions, poor connectivity and unreliable utilities can prevent students and researchers finding and accessing the resources they need. Next slide, please. So another area for improvement was around identifying and evaluating quality resources. So researchers and students want to use quality resources. Some of those users still need help to spot the quality and assess the relevance, even when they might be well established in their academic careers. We found that students especially need guidance and training in how to evaluate the resources they find, whereas we found with researchers, they might need support to identify the best journals in which to publish their own work. There is a role there for libraries to support their users through guidance and training in those research skills, as well as in the use of platforms and tools. Next slide, please. So yeah, through online research, students and researchers are often accumulating vast amounts of information simply because a lot of it is reasonably readily available. We found through our study that students and researchers need smoother processes to store, retrieve, and use articles they've accumulated, as demonstrated by the quotes on the screen. So there are existing reference management tools like RefWorks and Zotero, but students and researchers might not be aware of such tools, or might not have access to them or experience in using them. So that's everything that I was going to cover. That's sort of concludes my swift canter through the key findings of the OpenAthens report. We will be sharing a link to the report after today's webinar. But in the meantime, if any of the points I covered resonated with you, or if you have any questions, please do post them in the Q&A.
I think What I'm happy to do is ask a question around sort of the information advice and guidance. Um, David L, I just wonder in terms of what you offer to your student body and your staff, what's your starting point for sharing information advice and guidance, IAG, information advice and guidance?
Yeah. So David Leffler, Liberty University. I've had the pleasure of working with OpenAthens for a while now. I'm also the liaison to our school of business. So the amount of students that I meet with is it's a privilege. There's quite a few research needs here at Liberty, especially for the school of business. So with the context that I'm familiar with, guidance on where to go, how to research something, the unfortunate, unhelpful, and honest answer is that it is somewhat context dependent. So for the School of Business, there are sort of a suite of research databases that we go through, and mostly teaching students how to do Boolean searches, create those, I call them sort of safe zones for research. That's a good starting place. Also knowing how to filter for peer review. So there's sort of a virtual component to it for students that I meet with over Teams. And then there's also an in-person component where we call them one-shots, which are more expansive teaching opportunities where we can kind of go through and talk about where to find exactly what they're looking for. So for the School of Business, it's primarily peer-reviewed articles, but there's also things like SWOT analyses and trade journals. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying there's a few resources that we use, but I think for all of the liaisons, it's somewhat context dependent for our disciplines. So Alexis, if you have other thoughts, I'd love to hear that too.
Sure. I'm Alexis Soard from the University of Phoenix. My title is really long, so I'm not going to repeat it, but I basically take care of all of the back-end technology work that happens in the library. Our main focus has really been trying to meet our students where they are instead of forcing them to come to the library. It's interesting that the first report found that users thought the library was clunky. We actually agreed. And so we've really focused on trying to streamline our library experience. We focused on putting our resources in the classroom rather than forcing students to come and figure out what they're supposed to use. We know that our listing of databases is really long and it can be difficult to know which one to pick for what they need. So rather than force students to make that decision, we've tried to focus on going into their classrooms and going, hey, this is what you need for this assignment. And here are some suggestions on how you should use it to find the information you're looking for. I'll also add that we're an entirely online library. We don't have a physical presence at all, and we haven't since I've worked here. And I've been off and on for the last 17 years. So we have a lot of experience in the digital realm. But it's also to say that our approach to interacting with students has always been digital. We've never been face-to-face with our students. It's only actually recently that we started offering doctoral appointments so that we have a one-on-one with students. Other than that, it's always been through the classroom or through the website.
David L. Moving on then to, as we heard earlier on, few students, about 5% believe that the library has no role in supporting their studies, though many see the library as simply a building and a collection. So in your opinion, how can libraries better communicate their role in supporting student studies, including the services they provide beyond the collection, would you say?
Yeah, this is a good question. So to the 5% of the doubters, I had a colleague that, when he would come in and provide one-shots to classes, would basically just tell students outright that we pay loads and loads of money to provide access to the information that they need to complete their assignments. I don't necessarily do that myself. But, you know, to the 5% that think, you know, there's no role in supporting what they need, you know, it probably is worth mentioning to some, I guess, that the information that they need to complete their assignments is, unfortunately, it's not free. There's a lot of good open access initiatives that are going on, but so that's, I guess, one approach. But then the other, I would say, is probably to build more relationships with faculty, attend meetings. We email what I call movers and shakers. So faculty that are willing to give subject liaisons a foot in the door. So the 5% just may be unreached. You know, they may be students that they've never met with a librarian, or maybe they met with a librarian who was unfortunately not very friendly, or, you know, didn't, I don't know, maybe they're having a bad day or something. So I think those relationships are really important. Something that I try to do when I go and present in classes is just to be a friendly face and, you know, open a door if they have any questions, you know, to kind of create that channel of, hey, if you're new, especially if you're a first generation college student, you know, you don't necessarily see the value of libraries. At the very minimum, kind of create that connection to say, okay, if you have questions about your assignment, feel free to reach out. We're a resource for all of you guys. So those are kind of the off the cuff thoughts.
Absolutely, yeah. Alexis, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I will say we've actually taken a bit of a radical approach to how we work with students and communicate our value. We mistakenly thought our audience was students. For the longest time, we realized that actually our audience are our faculty. They have a much better relationship with students than we do because it's a lot more personal. You know, there's only one of me for 100 students. Well, there's only one faculty for maybe 20 students. So it's a lot more personal between the student and the faculty, and there's usually an innate level of trust that they have with their students that we don't have going into that. So we've really worked hard to make our relationships with our faculty and start to market what we can offer their students, and then they pass that information along to their students. And we found that to be a lot more successful than trying to get students to trust some stranger and some, you know, nerdy librarian that they've never heard of before.
Apologies, everyone. I'm back in the room. It sounds like Michael was doing a great job. Have we heard, on that note, have we heard from the students, either Sarah or Hannah, about their experience of engage? I'd be interested to know what your experience is of engaging with the library, learning and understanding how to actually use those technical resources. Sarah?
First of all, I love the library. Also, my name is Sarah. I'm a master's student at Liberty University. I also completed my undergrad at Liberty. It's different, undergrad to master's. Researching looks very, very different. And in my undergrad, research was important because our professors were trying to get us to use all of the resources that were needed to complete assignments. So in my undergrad, it looked a little different, but now as a master's student, I am searching super niche topics and I need that extra help. And it makes my heart sad that sometimes it's one librarian per 100 students. I value face-to-face interaction. I'm an online student, but I still attend my school in person. But I appreciate the fact that our library offers liaison librarians. David mentioned that that's what he is for School of Business. My master's is in clinical mental health counseling, but it would be really cool to have more of an engagement with the liaison librarian. Sometimes I just don't think that in the undergrad level, I don't think that we fully knew what was available to us. But now that I'm in my master's, I need the help. I need more help. So I really appreciate our liaison librarians. And I appreciate our library. It makes me sad to hear that it's 5% that say, no, libraries
Sarah,
are just.
if you could go back in time to your undergraduate study, I mean, what could have been done differently based on your experience as a master's student?
Well, in my undergrad, our school does something really cool. It offers like a basic research class that you're required to go to for the library, but it's only offered once, to my knowledge. And maybe Hannah can speak on this as a former undergrad student as well. But I wish that there would have been a required library course for each step of undergrad, like a more in-depth one. Like, hey, this is the library, like, learn how to use our databases, learn how to do this, just so you get a basic understanding, get your foot in the door. But the next year, maybe it's looking at just databases that are specific for your field. So what databases are specifically for psychology or counseling? And I wish that there could have been more in-depth just knowledge presented to me, so that when I did step into my master's, which I think it is also dependent on the student to take it upon themselves to learn what the library has, but maybe that's just me. But I do wish that we would have had some sort of just level up to know what all the library offers. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, Hannah, I wonder if your experience either now or certainly when you were an undergrad student is similar.
Yeah, I think I have a unique experience in my undergrad just because I started as a student worker at the library. And so part of my job was to promote our resources to other students. And like when I'm talking with other undergrad students, a lot of times they'll have questions or they'll say that they're struggling with research, and I was able to communicate the resources that we had. So it was kind of word of mouth at that point. But I really appreciate what Alexis, what her team is doing as far as communicating with faculty. I think that what could have really helped is having faculty that also promote our resources, because the professors that we have, they're probably the ones that we have at Librarian are very approachable, and they welcome questions. And so knowing that they don't always have the direct answer for like a specific research question that we have, seeing the library as a partner in our education and being more integrated, I think could be really helpful in promoting the library. I appreciate, I know the work that David does with the School of Business. He meets with plenty of students because he makes himself known. And he also meets with individual students and with faculty and really communicates with them. He has a great relationship with that school. And so I did my undergraduate degree in psychology, and I know that I didn't witness that sort of relationship between our faculty and our liaison librarian. So that's one thing that I think could have been very helpful, is if it was integrated into my class time, like Alexis said.
So off the back of that, I have a question for David in terms of student engagement with the library. It's OpenAthens has the ability to kind of anonymize that engagement, but it also has the ability to report on individual users. Is that data that you've ever used? Could you see that being problematic, or is there an opportunity in actually seeing who is or who isn't engaging with the library digitally?
Yeah, I think it's useful. I don't know that we've used that data for like a renewal decision yet, but it is helpful. I think honestly, any administrator or anyone who's looking at how to use resources in a targeted way or to advertise in a more precise way, it's going to be helpful. It's beneficial. I don't know that we've quite figured out exactly what that means practically speaking, but this is sort of an area that we're hoping to have more eyes on and to give more attention in the future. But yeah, it is helpful.
I mean, and Alexis, similarly from your part, I mean, do you see that kind of data, that data analytics of who is or who isn't using the library? Do you see that as problematic, or do you see that as an opportunity?
I agree with David. We haven't quite figured out how to use it practically. I tend to go in there and nose around just more because I'm nosy and curious and want to see who's coming into the library using resources. We have looked at it in the sense of like what type of user is coming into the library. So are we getting a lot of students? Are there a lot of faculty? I don't usually dig into the individual users. or at their program level, we do collect that information of what program the student is in. But like David, we really haven't figured out how to implement using that practically. I like it because I'm nosy.
And Sarah and Anna, in terms of maybe experience of your peers within either the undergraduate or masters, would you say that you are special, or special or unusual because you use the library a lot, or actually is there a uniform engagement across the library from the student body? Hannah, have you ever?
Yeah, John, thank you. I think in my undergraduate degree, I did have a distinct advantage with knowing the resources of the library and learning how to research. I think that there's, especially coming into undergrad and people are coming out of their high school education, some individuals just with outside life circumstances are trying to figure out where they want to go in life. And so a research class or those very basic research steps don't give them a lot of traction, and they aren't in context yet. And so I think it's difficult to bring engagement for younger students who don't necessarily have their interest piqued by a certain subject yet. So I really started to understand and to be really interested in research techniques as my undergraduate degree progressed. And so I think that as students get more interested in the subjects that they are studying, they're more likely to engage. I know the library, we always, it is the main resource. People will come to the website, but I'm just not sure they're really engaged in knowing how to use it to its full extent. And that comes with time as they progress through their undergraduate degree, I believe.
That's great. Sarah, similar or differing views there?
Yeah, very similar. I too was a student worker at the library.
Okay.
So I really did have an advantage. I had the upper hand. But yeah, I'm so sorry.
So the point I made before I was rudely cut off by some kind of digital infrastructure was that in the UK, OpenAthens works very closely with the National Health Service. So we work with a lot of doctors and junior doctors. And as part of that medical training, the information literacy, they probably don't call it that, but information literacy, understanding how to use the library, understanding what resources are available, understanding the importance of that quality of the source material is part of that experience. And actually we do see that those doctors who've had that training engage much more efficiently, much more effectively with the library themselves. And whether it's causative or correlative, there's no doubt that understanding and engagement and training with digital resources has, we think, pays dividends further down the line and out into the future. And in fact, there's a case study on our website of one of the universities in the UK. Again, it's a librarian looking to the value of the library. And actually the data does show that those students who engage with the library, whether it is causative, they are having better outcomes. So there's a really powerful story there about using information, advice and guidance. There's a question that's come through about whether or not this is similar. So we're talking about academic setting. If you're a government or a specialist or corporate library, do we think that the same applies? I mean, Alexis or David, it's a kind of an open question, but does the kind of your insight apply universally to non-academic libraries as well, do you think? I mean, Alexis, what's your view there?
So I've not always worked for an academic library. I had a brief stint into the legal world, do not recommend. But I think sometimes yes and sometimes no. Students are very different than working professionals. Students are looking to fulfill specific requirements, where working professionals need information relevant to what they're doing that day. They can't always look far in advance. And especially in the legal world, having research skills was nice, but that's what the librarian was there to do, was do their research. So yes and no, in that sense. I think a user is a user. And I think it's important to understand your user's needs no matter what sector you're in. And it's the same thing with us in the faculty. I got to know the attorneys. What do you need? What are you looking for? What's on your desk right now? What's going on? What kind of resources do you typically need? It's still about getting to know your user and what they need and providing it when they need it. I will say usually in the non-academic space, it's a lot faster paced because you're not looking weeks out at an assignment that's due in 3 or 4 weeks. You're talking about something they need tomorrow because they're going to court in the morning.
Thank you for that. And David, any thoughts, observations?
Yeah, so I think there is relevancy beyond academia. One of the things that I try to impart is sort of a paradigm shift for students and changing their ways of thinking to, if I can find it and I want it to be true and I like the result, therefore it is true. Trying to change that mindset to, I don't know what sort of information is available, and then sort of engaging in the conversation or learning about the resources that are available, and then constructing sort of a true narrative around high quality, peer-reviewed, accurate information. I think it's relevant outside of academia. Just even the mindset of, I'm going to, like Alexis said, information professionals are looking for targeted information. You would hope that most people are in that mindset of, you need to verify the information that you're looking for first. So I think most people feel that way. Most professionals are in that sort of frame of mind. But absolutely, I think there's applicability beyond academia, both for personal and professional reasons.
So David, it's interesting you say about the specificity of the resources they're looking at, the quality, the provenance of the resources they're looking for. We see, and the research has shown, I think Thales research shows it, and certainly our OpenAthens research has shown that many researchers, whether they're student or professional, do start on the open web, and that there's that recognition that that open web experience is very simple. Now, you don't know about the quality of you don't know where you end up potentially. Do you see yourself as competing with the open web as a librarian, or is that something that you're looking to assimilate into that user experience, that user journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'll sort of start with the positive. I think the open web is very user-friendly, and it's what people are used to. And so as a librarian, that's sort of what I'm conscious of for taking what is known and then moving to what's unknown. So the user experience, if you will, is really nice. One singular search bar to find what I'm looking for is the dream. The problem is information is more complicated than that often. So I'll just sort of speak for the School of Business and sort of our context. You have to do a bit of digging to find what you're looking for. And so part of the challenge of talking with students, and especially in class presentations, is moving them from, I'm familiar with this resource, therefore I'm going to use it, to, you need a particular kind of piece of information, so peer-reviewed articles or a SWOT analysis, whatever they're looking for. And there are a limited number of resources that can provide that. And so trying to take them from what is easy and familiar to what is accurate and vetted is sort of the challenge for myself as a librarian. I don't know if that quite answers your question.
Well, I mean, Alexis, do you have a view on that sort of, is it open web, friend or foe sort of question?
So, like David, I will admit, for a long time, like many librarians, I was very, anti-open web, can use the library, but the reality is our users are going to start there. So it doesn't behoove me to be anti-web. Instead, we'd rather show them how to use it responsibly. One of the things that we are conscious of is we are very focused on helping our students learn what they're going to need to use in their careers. And like David said, there is some information you just can't get on the open web if you think about deep company reports. Those just aren't available for free. And so our goal is to teach our students where to find those, because they're going to run into paywalls. You're going to start on Google. That's totally fine. We get that. I use Google too. I use it every day. The thing that we're trying to teach our students is when they need to switch to use the library's resources, and when Google is no longer their friend. I do think since we were talking about, non-academic libraries and looking more at a specialized library, I do think a lot of people, when they get into their careers, start to transition their mindset from, let me just Google everything, to, I need something authoritative because I need to be accurate in my career. And so we're trying to get students in that mindset a little sooner, going, that's great, go ahead and Google, and then fact check.
So, I mean, that's it, because I've been in a room of librarians before, and I've asked the question whether or not the library should be present in that research experience. And by that, I mean, that was about that seamless access to information. Does the library want to be an agent in that, or is the library's role to get out of the way and just get the user directly to the content that they need? It's validated. I mean, do either of you have a view? I mean, how present should the library be in getting the researcher, the student, the professional to the information that they need?
I think the library should be as present as the user needs them to be. It's easy. I think most of us on this call, we all love the library. It's very easy to go, yes, you should always use the library. It's great. It's fantastic. I worked very hard on that website. I love it. It's my baby. But the reality is, students don't always need me. Sometimes they are more than capable of finding the information themselves. And so sometimes my job is to simply get out of the way. I want to be there when they need me. I want to be there when they have questions. I want them to be successful. I don't want them to be frustrated. So if they are feeling any frustration, I want them to know that there's help available to them. But I want them to be able to do these things on their own, because the reality is, when people are out in the real world, they're going to kind of be on their own. You might have a team that you work with, but you're off doing your work at your desk by yourself. Most of us headphones on to block out all of the noise around us. And so I want to be there when they need me. I don't always want to be the constant presence barking at them to come use the library.
I mean, Sarah, do you recognize that? Where would you start your research? And has that changed as you've moved into your master's?
It has changed. I love a good Google search, but something that I love that I learned at some point, I don't remember who had taught me, but if you search on Google Scholar, our library somehow has partnered with, I don't really know the logistics, but if I do search on Google Scholar, I can see what articles or journals are available through the library's website. So that's been a really cool moment for me when I type something into Google Scholar and I'm like, oh, a lot of these are available on my library's website. But mostly now, because I use the library website so much and I'm familiar with the databases, I go directly to the library's website. So,
Anna, is that similar?
Yes, I would say just with starting at the library early on in my career, I've seen the benefit of it. And I've actually learned through the library how to effectively use Google. I was always taught in high school it was never an option. You should never go to Google or Wikipedia, those types of things, obviously because they're not peer reviewed or scholarly. But through the resources of the library, I was able to learn and understand how to use those websites to find scholarly information through things like Sarah was talking about, like the Get It at Liberty feature through Google Scholar and stuff like that.
That's great. There's a very specific question come in, which is about college programs in prison, and whether or not we might not have a view on that, but whether or not that prison environment might make a difference to the accessibility of that information. I don't know, David or Alexis, if you have a view, or that's something we could come back to with the questionnaire?
I attended a conference where there was a speakers that worked in a prison. I don't have any personal experience. The logistics of doing that and the funding of doing that seems to be maybe one of the biggest challenges. The e-resource infrastructure seems to be very different. But a whole lot beyond that, I don't have a lot to comment.
Okay, thank you for that. Alexis, any view?
Similar to David, I've not
Yeah.
had personal experience in this. I can imagine that it is a much different experience simply because I can go use my computer anytime that I want. My students can go use their computers anytime they want. I imagine in prison that's a lot different. They can't just do their schooling when they want to.
So, I mean, we've been chatting now for 45 minutes. So that's without David B, which was a shame. And that was a technical challenge. Just briefly, David or Alexis or Sarah, and I mean, do you see any infrastructure or technical challenges? Is there a top technical challenge that you face in terms of that user journey to your content? Anyone want to go? Hannah,
Yeah,
you want to say something? Yeah.
So this is kind of my area since I do all of the technical work. I feel like there are technical challenges, but not the ones that we used to have. It's more about things that making sure information is accessible on any type of device. I've never had to be so mobile friendly in my life, and I admit I still struggle. I don't build mobile friendly. I tend to go back and make sure the stuff I build is mobile friendly, which is not the way you're supposed to do that. But it's just, it's new for me and it's difficult.
Is that
And it's something I'm still learning.
Is that specifically with library technology and library services, do you think?
I do. I think more students, and I dare say students, and Sarah and Hannah can correct me. I dare say people who actually know the value of the library realize it's a little bit easier to use on a computer and not their phone. But I can't assume that that's how students are accessing information. I need to assume that they're on their phones, they're trying to read something. And that can be a challenge to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, in the publishing world, certainly that the concept of mobile first. So particularly with that user experience and that user design, that was one of the mantras that we'd have. If it works on a mobile, it'll work out, because so many people just do access information on their mobile. I mean, David, a primary technical challenge, if there's one that might crop up.
I will say, as far as like large scale learning management system, off-campus testing was a big deal for us, which we've sort of solved with virtual machines. So
Okay.
Confirming that resources are indeed working as expected from the off-campus user's perspective, that was one of the main challenges that we've faced and basically solved with virtual machines.
And then Sarah, do you have any technical issues or sort of with trying to get to the information that you need?
I mean, I will say sometimes when I'm looking up super niche topics, or sometimes I've just stumbled upon like articles that I couldn't access for whatever reason, and I had to chat into the library and say, hey, this one's not working, can you help me out? So that's only happened a handful of times, but
Okay.
when I've watched my friends do research, because I work at the library, they'll ask me like, hey, do you know how to fix this? I'm like, I actually don't, but it has happened. And I think that my worry is that it'll sway them away from just wanting to use the library's resources, because they'll just say, hey, well, that wasn't working, I'm done, but here I am, I'm committed to using the library's resources, but I just get fearful if something doesn't work, or if it's not easy to somebody else, is it going to prevent them from using it?
And a similar experience?
Yeah, I think when I think about technical issues, things work most of the time, but when they don't, that's when it's the most frustrating.
Right.
And additionally, the variety of search engines, database engines, that are used is incredibly difficult to navigate sometimes, like having to save searches, having to save multiple articles in multiple different places and trying to find which one belongs where. And I've struggled, like we have access to RefWorks, which has not been effective for me. And so even just having more of a synthesized and succinct way of organizing research that's not as difficult, because I find often when I'm trying to access an article online, I have to search the article name in the library website and then go and click a certain link, because the link, if I save it, it won't work. So it's like there's a lot of roundabout ways to get to the information that I need that could be more efficient. I'm not sure how to fix that, but
yeah, so that's an interesting. So I'm going to ask one question. You can give me if all of you give me a really simple answer, is yeah, there are things that need to be fixed. I think that's why we're all on this panel, and hopefully that's why people are listening. You know, we recognize the fact that user journey into digital library resources could be smoother, it could be easier. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about, you know, the user experience of digital libraries, what would it be?
I would make all of our content searchable through that single search box.
Via similar to through Google or other similar search engines are available, but would it, you know, would it be through the open web? I know that EBSCO have a project.
I would be fine with the open web.
Yeah.
But I dare say David also knows this, that every search tool or any search tool that we subscribe to does not search every single resource that we have. I think we're at about 80% that our search resource searches in our content. It'd be great if it searched 100%, because I agree with Hannah. I was actually thinking that it's difficult for users to have to learn how to use 10 different databases just to get through what they're trying to do today. And that's a lot. I mean, I know how to navigate them, but I'm a professional and this is my job. This is what I do every day. But it's difficult to have to learn how to use 10 different things. And if you don't have a good tool that allows you to synchronize those things, it's really hard. And so it would be great if you just could search once and it brought back exactly what you needed.
Search once, search everything. I mean, David, you got a magic wand? What would you do?
Magic wand, I would not change, but add natural language searching and prioritize that over Boolean, using some kind of artificial intelligence to summarize the resources accurately.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you think AI has a role to play? Do you think AI could solve that problem?
Yeah, I do. Maybe that
problem?
Famous last words, but yeah, I do.
That would be a whole other webinar, I think.
Yeah.
Hannah, you've got a magic wand. What would solve all your problems, do you think, getting access to that information?
I agree with Alexis in making one search engine and making it easy to organize articles and things that we find, easier to summarize. Yeah, I think, yes, that's the end.
That's it. Yeah, but and Sarah.
I really liked what David touched on with the Boolean terms. I would love to just be able to type in what I would normally type into Google and have results pop up. But I know how to use Boolean phrases, but it would be really cool to just be able to type in what I want and get what I want right away.
So, Dave, I do have a follow-up question. And since you said it, I mean, are there generative models out there that are getting close?
Yeah, there are vendors who are working on integrating this technology that we're currently entertaining, and they're improving. I'm not going to name names, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
That's great. Okay, we've got 5 minutes to go. Has anyone got any final thoughts? Final observations? I mean, we talked about information and guidance. I don't think that's new. I think that's always been one of the challenges. So I was very interested to say, you know, you had that, or someone said there was that one class or one opportunity to go and learn, and actually that should probably be accessible all the time, I should think, whether it should be mandatory. I hate mandating things, but actually if it has a positive impact, maybe it needs to be part of that. What else did we talk about? We talked about well, we just touched on sort of simplicity, I guess, making sure you know, we at OpenAthens, Richard has been listening to all of this, and that, you know, that desire from simplicity is one of our internal mantras at OpenAthens, is keep it simple. And it's not easy in a complex world, particularly when you have issues with technology. So I'm going to say a massive thank you to Michael for kind of seamlessly getting us through some of the technical challenges. Thank you to Tara as well, who's in the background. But on that note, in fact, Michael, do you want to quickly share the links to the 2 reports?
Yes, I'll just share my screen briefly.
I was at a presentation for the technology from Sage Librarian Futures piece. It's packed full of, it's really good. I highly recommend it, almost as much as I recommend the OpenAthens Library User Experience Report. But actually both paint a really interesting picture about how the role of the library, the role of the librarian, the role of the students too, in fact, in actually getting people to the information that they need. So there are those reports. A massive thanks to everybody for joining us. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day without any technical challenges. So thank you, everybody.